Olá a todos, eu sou Jussara Burini, somos do Centro de Estudos Fênix e estamos aqui, vou começar em português, né, que a maioria vai assistir em português. A gente trouxe um convidado especial hoje, Dr. Peter Goldman. Ele é americano e ele é o fundador da escola Zone Technique School. E nós vamos fazer perguntas em inglês, ele é americano, e nós vamos colocar a legenda embaixo, mas já agradecendo a presença de todos. We would like to thank you, Dr. Peter, for coming to present your amazing technique. And I've just introduced it in Portuguese because a lot of our initial audience will be Brazilian, and we're going to put all the translation in Portuguese underneath. And we also have Vivian. Ela faz parte do projeto Patriarca e é estudante do Dr. Peter e estará com a gente para a gente fazer essa entrevista e trazer essa evolução, essa revolução na medicina complementar, que eu digo, né? And complementary medicine with amazing results that Dr. Peter has been achieving. So he's an American. Ele é quiropraxista.
Como é que fala? Chiropractor.
Em português is a bit twisted. E ele trouxe um trabalho, junto com o trabalho dele, trouxe um trabalho do Dr. Fleet, que ele vai falar com a gente a respeito, que é um trabalho meio que multidimensional. It's a little multidimensional, related to quantum physics and to the healing. And so we're going to start. Dr. Vivian, por favor, fala um pouquinho, dá um oi pra gente aí.
Oi, pessoal, tudo bem? Só tenho gratidão de estar aqui hoje com a Jussara, querida Jussara, Dr. Pete. E é isso aí. Vai ser uma entrevista maravilhosa, gente. Gratidão.
Please, Dr. Peter, would you like just to introduce yourself, give us a bit of your background and how everything started regarding this amazing technique that you're getting amazing results with your clients?
First of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm going to answer that first question. So, I was born and raised in New York City. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I grew up in a very naturally oriented family, meaning that many people, of course, go to medical doctors either for a checkup or maybe they go if they don't feel well or whatever. But for whatever reason, I grew up in a house where we didn't go to medical doctors. So when I was a kid, we basically did four things to stay healthy. We had a naturopath, which is known as an ND, naturopathic doctor. They give you herbs and tell you what to eat, things like that. We had an excellent homeopathic doctor, a homeopath. We had a phenomenal chiropractor, and that chiropractor was actually a student of Dr. Fleet, which we'll get to. And my mom also liked reflexology, where you kind of like massage the feet. So anyway, so I grew up in a house like that. Of course, being a kid, I didn't know any different. I didn't really think about it because that's just the kind of house I grew up in. If me or my sister didn't feel well, my mom would call the homeopath. They'd tell us what to take. They'd put the homeopathic thing in our mouth. My mom would rub our feet, and that was it. We find the reflexology point. So I grew up in a house like that. Now, as I got older, I got involved in a lot of sports and things like that. And I started going to my chiropractor, who I mentioned before, a little more often. Of course, I still do have a lot of respect for homeopathy and naturopathy and reflexology too. Just that I gravitated toward chiropractic. I gravitated toward my chiropractor. And really, I got to the point when I was a teenager where I believed, whether it was true or false, I believed that chiropractic done right could basically fix anything. Now, I'm not talking, of course, about emergency medicine. If someone is bleeding, they need stitches, or if someone, crashes on their motorcycle, they have to be sewn back together, something like that, then obviously that's not for a chiropractor. But I got to the point where I was starting to feel and believe that chiropractic could really help anything. So anyway, I was very interested in it. Although I didn't think I would really do it, I just liked experiencing it. So anyway, that's kind of the first part. Then I went to college. I was actually an economics major. I went to college in Boston. I didn't think I would be a doctor of any type. I enjoyed business and things like that. So I went to college in Boston. I studied economics for 4 years. I played on the tennis team there. I was a tennis player, so I was playing tennis, studying economics, whatever. Then I moved back to New York City when I graduated college. I probably was 21, and I worked in New York City for 4 years. And while I was working in New York, I kept thinking, I think I should be a chiropractor. So finally, I went back to school 4 years after I graduated college, which was in 1993. I graduated college in 1989. So in 1993, I went to chiropractic school. Now, even though, of course, I went to chiropractic school and I learned what they teach you in chiropractic school, I learned what that is. I was lucky enough to have mentors outside of school. So I would say that I got my degree in chiropractic school, which says I'm a chiropractor for 4 years. I went there. But I really learned about healing from a whole different lineage of healing. And I'll basically just segue to that for a moment. There was a spectacular chiropractor. His name was Dr. Thurman Fleet. And Dr. Thurman Fleet practiced in Texas, the United States, in Texas, in the 1930s and 1940s and things like that. Now, when people think of chiropractic, they think of like neck pain and back pain and knee pain and shoulder pain and things like that. But this guy, Dr. Fleet, was doing things which might sound unbelievable, but I'm just going to tell you some of those things. People would come to Dr. Fleet with any disease under the sun. I'm talking about like leukemia, like major things. They would come to Dr. Fleet with terrible, terrible diseases after they had been to medical doctors and acupuncturists, herbalists, even other chiropractors, and were completely sick. And they would go to Dr. Fleet. Somehow he would do what he did, and they would heal. So because he was this master healer who somehow tapped into whatever he tapped into, and he was getting these spectacular results, he opened a school of sorts and was teaching other chiropractors how to, and even other, chiropractors. He was teaching medical doctors. He was teaching many different types of healers and doctors how to do what he did. And I mentioned before that one of the 4 docs that we went to when I was a little kid was this great chiropractor who was a direct student of Dr. Fleet. So I went to this student of Dr. Fleet. And then when I went to chiropractic school, he mentored me through that whole process. I went to chiropractic school in Atlanta, Georgia. He was back in New York, but I was on the phone with him all the time. Every time I went home to New York, I would visit him. And there was another disciple of Dr. Fleet, his name was Dr. Brown, and he was in the Georgia area, about 45 minutes from my school. And every weekend I would go to him, every Sunday, and I would learn from him. So I spent about 100 hours one-on-one with Dr. Brown, who was a direct student of Dr. Fleet, and I learned what I know, which is certainly not taught in any chiropractic school, and that ultimately became the zone technique. Because what Dr. Fleet, I'll just wrap up this answer with this, what Dr. Fleet created called zone therapy, and I learned zone therapy in 1993, and then over the years, taking what I learned from my mentors like Dr. Brown, which was the Dr. Fleet zone therapy, and combining it with many other influences I've had in healing, metaphysics, etc., I created zone technique. And then, of course, I opened zone school, and here we are.
My sound's off.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry. What it seems to me, because I've watched your video about your story and stuff, that you had all the financial background in your family, and you went to economic school, but deep inside, it felt like a mission that you had to accomplish. That you got told you to follow something that you was already involved in your family, which seems to me there was something metaphysic really that was like a mission. And tell us, how did you hear about Dr. Fleet? Tell us a little bit more about his story and his illumination, and did you hear him about him from your chiropractor, from your personal chiropractor?
Well, interestingly enough, even though I started going to my personal chiropractor in Brooklyn when I was probably 8 or something, and I went to him right until I was going to chiropractic school when I was 25 or whatever I was. Even though I went to him all that time and I saw the miraculous things he did, he never talked about Dr. Fleet to me. I never had heard of Dr. Fleet. I just knew that this chiropractor I was going to really could fix anything. I mean, he was like a magician. He could fix anything. Right. I mean, literally, you name it, this guy could fix it, which I observed. But I never heard of Dr. Fleet. Now, when I went to chiropractic school and I called my mentor back in Brooklyn and I said, you know, they're teaching a bunch of garbage in this place. I mean, I'll get my degree here, but it's nonsense. They're not teaching anything about real healing or anything. And he said, don't worry. He said, this guy, Dr. Brown, was a student of this guy, Dr. Fleet, who taught me also. Then I started learning about Dr. Fleet. I was studying with Dr. Brown on the weekends, calling my mentor in New York constantly, visiting my mentor when I went back to New York. Then I got 2 more mentors of the Dr. Fleet lineage along the way, a couple of years later. So I had 4 direct teachers of the Dr. Fleet lineage, and I spent over 100 hours one-on-one with each of them. So it's over probably 500 hours one-on-one with 4 grand masters who, you know, again, I want to just say this before I continue the story to Dr. Fleet's illumination. This is an important thing. This is very important. When you talk about healing, someone can talk about a chiropractic technique. They can talk about homeopathy. They can talk about naturopathy. They can talk about Reiki, energy work, shamanistic work, vibrational work, spiritual work, acupuncture, whatever. There's so many, you know, Christian Science. There's so many types of healing on this earth. But the most important thing, the thing that is on top of everything, is results. That's all that counts in healing. Meaning, someone could say, man, I know this amazing energy worker, or I know this amazing chiropractor, or I know this amazing medical doctor, or I know this amazing acupuncturist, or I know this amazing herbalist. But all that matters is, what can they do? So for example, if someone, I'm just going to make up something, if someone has a very bad digestive system, really, really bad digestion, or someone has a significant gynecological problem, or someone has a nervous system disorder, or someone has a circulatory problem, or someone has a glandular problem, or whatever it is. All I'm interested in is who can fix it. That's all I'm interested in. If so, you take this imaginary person who has, we'll just make this up, who has terrible insomnia, who has panic attacks, and has horrible digestion. Okay, well, let me see who can fix it. So they're going to come to one of these practitioners. I want to see the practitioner who can make them sleep great, make the panic attacks go away forever, and make their digestion perfect. That's all I'm interested in. So with that said, I have explored a lot of things in healing, in chiropractic, because there's about 300 different techniques in chiropractic and outside of chiropractic. And I've never seen anything as good as results in healing as zone technique. Now, I just want to, and then I'll get to Dr. Fleet's illumination because you asked about that, but I want to point something out. If you look at most doctors and healers, you will notice that their patients or their clients tend to live near them. Of course, unless someone is doing distance work, then they can do it anywhere in the world. But if people are coming physically to someone for an adjustment or an acupuncture needle or an herb in the mouth or a Reiki session, if it's an in-person session, the practitioner, their clients tend to be within 45 minutes of their office. Mm-hmm. Maybe they have a couple who travel 2 hours, but mostly. But in my practice, I've had over 200 patients driving 4 hours each way to see me. My session is only 3 minutes. or 5 minutes. So you have to think someone's driving 8 hours in a day for 5 minutes. And we have 200 people like that. That will tell you how powerful the results are. And I've had patients fly to see me from 30 different countries and cities around the world. That has to tell you something. If people from 30 different countries and cities are flying just for healing, that should tell you a lot. So again, whatever I'm saying is based on the foundation of unparalleled results. So that's that. Now, to Dr. Fleet's illumination. So Dr. Fleet had a very interesting story. It's very fascinating, and it actually sounds a little unbelievable, but apparently it's true. So what happened was Dr. Fleet was a very uneducated person. He only went through, I think, the 4th or 6th grade. He was a very uneducated man. He was born in 1895. Now, he was in the United States, and this is pretty wild. He went to World War I. You guys all know World War I was from 1914 to 1918. World War I. He was one of the most highly decorated soldiers in the whole U.S. Army in World War I. So he apparently was very good at being a soldier. I'm sure he didn't want to do what he did, but he did it, and he obviously killed a lot of people because that's what you do when you're in war. And I'm sure he didn't like it, but nonetheless, they told him to do it, and he apparently was good at it because he was one of the most highly decorated soldiers in the whole U.S. Army. Now, while he was in the war, he got shot in the head, and he had shrapnel, which is little pieces of metal, in his skull, which is not good.
No.
And he also, for those history buffs listening, you'll know that World War I was a war of mustard gas. So Germany was sending mustard gas to the enemy, and he, of course, the Allied soldiers, they had the gas masks, but Dr. Fleet was fighting, and the Germans sent the gas, and he didn't have his mask, so he sucked in that gas, and 4/5 of his lungs got burnt. So
wow.
4/5 of his lungs were fried. So when he left the war, he went to a military hospital and back in the United States, and they examined him, and they said, based on the shrapnel in his skull and the 4/5 of his lungs being burnt, that he was going to be dead in 1 year. They told him he had 1 year to live, right when he came out of the army. But somehow he survived that year, and then he went to a chiropractor, and the chiropractor helped him quite a bit. So he decided to become a chiropractor. So he went to chiropractic school, and he became a chiropractor in Texas. It's called Texas Chiropractic College, which is still there. I think it was in a different part of Texas then, but it still exists. So he went to Texas Chiropractic, he became a chiropractor, and he practiced for 3 or 4 months. And he became very frustrated because he felt some people would get better and some people would not get better. And he did not understand, for example, if someone has asthma and they adjust, we'll say T3 is the bone, the nerve that comes out of T3, goes to the lungs and the bronchial tubes. So he would adjust T3, open the nerves to the lungs, and the asthma should go away. But sometimes it went away on some people, and sometimes it didn't. So he became very upset. Why do some people get better and some people don't get better if I'm doing the same bone, the same nerve, to the same thing? So he decided to quit. He was only in practice for 6 months, but he said, I'm retiring. And he was very upset, and he went into a really deep depression. He was very depressed, very upset. I think he had a lot of problems from the war. He killed so many people. He saw so many people being killed. And then on top of that, he joined a profession that he didn't understand why some people get better and some people don't. So he became very upset. And by the way, for those who were wondering how Dr. Fleet could go to chiropractic school only being through the 4th grade, well, now, of course, if you want to go to chiropractic school, you have to have a 4-year college degree. But back in the 1920s, chiropractic was very new, so he just signed up and you could go. But anyway, so he went to this very bad depression. He was very upset, and he was just in this deep depression. But for some reason, during his deep depression, he experienced what is known as an illumination. How that happens, I don't know. Why it happens, I don't know. I don't exactly understand how an illumination works, but nonetheless, he had one. And he had a 7-day and 7-night experience, which went something like this. He had no bodily functions for 7 days and 7 nights. He didn't eat, he didn't sleep, he didn't go to the bathroom for 7 days and 7 nights. And during these 7 days and 7 nights, something was talking to him. I don't know what that is, that's talking to him. Some entity or God, or I don't know, but something is talking to him, giving him all this information. And he was writing things down all over the place, writing on the paper, writing on the walls, writing.
Wow.
And at the end of the 7-day and 7-night, and by the way, let me tell you one interesting thing. During the 7-day and 7-night illumination, of course, his family was there. They thought he went crazy. They said, he went crazy. This man is crazy. But during the 7 days and 7 nights, anyone who looked at him, if they looked at him, he appeared transparent. He appeared see-through. You could look through him, which really is incredible. Now, anyway, now you have to understand, this happened in 1931 in San Antonio, Texas. And I don't know if you guys know, because you're not from the U.S., but people in 1931 in San Antonio, Texas, were not looking for spiritual phenomena or new age things. They were hardcore Christians who loved Jesus, and they were not thinking about anything else. So for someone to say, this guy is freaking see-through, is very odd. Anyway, he finishes the 7-day and 7-night illumination, and his family immediately had him committed to a psychiatric institution. They said, this guy is crazy. I think he was in a straitjacket. They put him in a straitjacket. They put him in a psychiatric institution. And the way I understand it is, he said, well, I probably did go crazy. I'm not denying that. I probably did go crazy, but I don't need to be in a mental institution. I can just go home. So he actually was a really good soldier. The way I understand it is, he was in a straitjacket and he escaped. He climbed up and he walked home, and his family saw him. He said, no, I'm home. I'm sure I went crazy, but I don't need to be living in a mental hospital. So he went back to his depression. He went right back to his depression, like nothing happened. But while he was writing on the walls, they wanted to examine what he wrote. And they asked him, what did you write? And he looked at it, and it was not in English. And he only spoke English, as far as I know. And they said, what is this? And he said, I don't know. But the lettering is not even the lettering we use. So he said, I don't know what this is. I only went to the 4th grade. I don't know about language and stuff. I don't know about lettering. So they called in like an ancient language scholar. And everything he wrote for those 7 days was in Sanskrit. It's the Indian language. He's writing in Sanskrit for 7 days. So they said, Dr. Fleet, this is Sanskrit. Well, he said, this is Sanskrit. You're writing in Indian. He said, I never heard of it. I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, despite the fact that he wrote in Sanskrit, which would be impressive to some people, it was not impressive to him. He still thought he went crazy. Even he thought that he went crazy. And he was back into his depression. Now, during his illumination, he predicted 4 things. And these are not the kind of predictions people can make. It's not like a psychic who says, oh, I think the stock market would be up. It's not like that. He predicted 4 things that you couldn't predict. There's nothing that you could ever know that these things were going to happen. And he predicted the 4 things. I think one of them, for those who know U.S. history, there was a point where the United States buried the gold of the United States in Fort Knox, called Fort Knox. They buried the gold. So he said the U.S. is going to bury the gold. They're going to call in all the gold and bury the gold. So he, things like that, things that you couldn't do. So he was home one day in his depression, a couple of days later, and then his wife came to him and said, look, you want to see the paper? You want to see the headline of the paper? And he said, no, I don't want to see the headline of the paper. And she said, no, I think you should see the headline of the paper. And his first prediction came true, what he said. So then A few days later, the second prediction, then the third prediction, the fourth. The four things he said during his elimination happened just like he said. So then he said, okay, well, I didn't go crazy, obviously. This is legit. So then he had 7 days and 7 nights of knowledge, and he wrote it all down. It took him a long time. And he created this very powerful philosophy of healing and life or whatever. And he also created the zone, what he calls zone therapy, which is what I learned in 1993, zone therapy. And I altered it a bit because I learned zone therapy, and then like I said, I had other influences in healing and metaphysics. I changed it a bit to be zone technique, and that's what I teach in zone school. And by the way, if anyone looks at Dr. Fleet's writings of zone therapy and they look at what I teach in zone technique, it is different. You can see some differences. But of course, I love Dr. Fleet. He's the greatest, of course. Now, anyone who's listening to this, who is a chiropractor, Reiki master, energy worker, medical doctor, acupuncturist, homeopath, it doesn't matter. If you are a doctor or healer of any type, you can join Zone School and learn this. And I think it's up there. It says zonetechnique.com. If you go to zonetechnique.com, you can learn about the school, which is about 50 hours of learning online. You can be anywhere in the world. We have over 1,100 members all over the world, and it's growing very quickly, on the way to tens of thousands. So you can join right on the homepage, and then you can start learning right away. So that's his illumination.
Wow. We're putting just, eu vou falar em português pro pessoal, colocando aí, gente, o link do Dr. Peter, do curso dele, Zone Technique. But would you be able to, have you got any question, Vivian, for Dr. Peter?
Can you talk a little bit about the story about Dr. Fleet's healing with the Parkinson's disease?
Yeah,
that
sure.
story is really good.
Sure. So Dr. Fleet was teaching a seminar in New York City, coincidentally, where I'm from. I think it was 1955, I think. He was teaching a group of chiropractors, about 300 chiropractors. And, you know, when you think of spiritual healers and spiritual teachers, you have a certain impression of what they might be like. Maybe you think they're going to be very meditative, sitting cross-legged with a turban, very, you know, whatever you think they're going to be like. But Dr. Fleet wasn't like that. He was a rough guy. He was a real rough guy. Just a tough, rough guy. And he was teaching a seminar in New York City. And in the front row of the 300 chiropractors or so who were listening to him, there was one chiropractor who had Parkinson's disease. Back then, it was actually not called Parkinson's yet. It was called paralysis agitans. That was what it was called back then. Paralysis agitans. It was renamed Parkinson's disease at some point. I don't know when. Anyway, there was a guy in front who was shaking. So Dr. Fleet, I said he was like a rough guy. He said, "You come up here because I can't concentrate. You're shaking too much. I have to fix you because I can't concentrate with you shaking." So the guy came on front of the stage with everyone watching. And Dr. Fleet said, what's your problem? And the guy said he had paralysis agitans. And Fleet said, "I'm going to fix you now because I don't want you to shake because I can't concentrate." And the guy said, "No, you don't understand. It's paralysis agitans. It's not curable. The medical doctors already said it's something you have forever. You're going to shake forever." And Fleet had a silver dollar in his pocket. I don't know about the monetary coins in Brazil, but in the US, they have what's called a silver dollar. They're not very common now. They still exist, but back then they were more common. So like someone in the US might have like a quarter in their pocket now. I guess no one carries change anymore. But anyway, having a silver dollar was not so odd. So Dr. Fleet took a silver dollar out of his pocket and he held it like this. They said, "See, if you're standing over here, you see one side of the silver dollar. It looks like heads. But if you're standing over here, you see another side of the silver dollar. It looks like tails. The same silver dollar, but depends where you're standing, what you see. If you're standing over here, the silver dollar looks like one thing. If you're standing over here, the silver dollar looks like another. There's two sides to everything. The medical doctors told you can't heal. I'm telling you can heal." Fleet said, "You want to get better?" The guy said, "Yeah, I want to get better." So Fleet said, "Open up your hand. And the guy opened his hand. It was shaking, of course. So Fleet took the silver dollar. He put it in the guy's hand. He said, make a fist really tight, like really tight. Make your fist super tight. The guy make the fist. His hand's still shaking. But now at that point, it was about Saturday at about 6 p.m. It was time for the dinner break. So Dr. Fleet said, okay, I want everyone to go to dinner. You're going to come back in an hour. We're going to resume. When we come back, I'm going to finish fixing this guy. He's not going to have Parkinson's. He's not going to have paralysis agitans anymore. And he said, you're going to go eat dinner with one hand because you got to keep holding that until you come back. You can pay with your other hand. You can eat with your other hand. But I want you to hold this super tight the whole time. Everyone can go to dinner. So they went to dinner. The guy was at dinner. He paid with his one hand. He ate with one hand. He held it super tight. The guy, now it's 7 o'clock or whatever time it was. They come back from dinner, and Fleet says, you come up here. Everyone got back to their seat, and the guy's holding it, and Dr. Fleet said, give me your hand. The guy put his hand out. Fleet said, open your hand. The guy couldn't open his hand, not because of the condition, just anyone who holds their hand that tight for an hour, it might be hard to open it. So Fleet pried his hand open. And then Fleet took the silver dollar out. He threw it in the audience. He said, this man has faith. He'll never shake again. And that was it. He never did. He was cured. Now, is that the cure for Parkinson's? Telling someone, no, it's not. But if you understand the inner workings of what happened in that example, you understand why the guy was cured. And certainly in zone school, which is my school, you'll understand. You'll understand exactly why that healing took place. But again, is the details of a silver dollar and the holding it? No, it's got nothing to do with it. But there was things happening on a deeper level behind the obvious things that create the healing. And of course, that's all explained in zone school.
Amazing. And coming from a healthcare profession, we see a lot of how, not saying anything bad about allopathic medicine, it has its place. It's necessary when the body somatizes everything. But unfortunately, we forgot to consider other levels of healing. The energy, the multidimensional aspect of it, the faith, you mentioned in the other live that I saw with the program about placebo effect, and I read a very interesting book called The Healer Within, and I believe that aspect. Obviously, I haven't started my course yet with yourself, but I'm very interested in it sounds that we can reach that side of life, nature, and healing that we kind of forgot about it, or for some reason we were conditioned not to think about it.
Well, actually, I just want to say about the placebo effect. It's interesting. First of all, the placebo effect has many different definitions. There's probably, when someone hears placebo effect, they think 10 different things. But I want to say one thing about the placebo effect, which of course is a real effect. If it was that simple, in other words, because the placebo effect is apparently real, so I agree with you 100%. If it was that simple to employ it, then you could tell any doctor or healer, just tell your patients, well, you're going to get better. But obviously it's not that simple because their results show that they don't quite understand it. There is a science to understanding how to tap into what's called the placebo effect. And again, that's not all of what zone school is about, but it certainly will be taught in zone school. I don't even use the term placebo effect, doesn't even matter. But since that's the term we're using now, the placebo effect can be not only explained, and I explained it in zone school totally, but also how it can be tapped into. Because since we know it's very powerful, the question is, how do you tap into it? Because let's say someone says, well, I'm just going to some doctor or healer says, oh, I want to use this effect, but they can't. They don't really know how to do it. Because if it was, like I said earlier, if it's as simple as just telling your patients, oh, you're going to get better now, then it would be. But it's much more, there's a lot more knowledge needed, and it's fully explained in zone school.
I've got loads of questions bubbling in my head, but I'm just trying to be brief with my questions because it's a very, I believe it's a very wide subject, and little we know about, especially in this side of the world. Ancient, do you believe, do you make any correlation with the ancient Chinese and Greek medicine as well? Because as we know, a chiropractor's profession nowadays, I've been to a chiropractor once. I had a vertebral column problem in my lumbar. Actually affected my sacrum, S1. But anyways, and nowadays they are known only to heal bones. But as we know, and I've heard you saying from zone technique, from your treatment, you can help somebody with a liver problem. I've heard that you took somebody from the list of a liver transplant. And can you talk to us a little bit about how that can be? How can you achieve such amazing results?
I'll answer all that, because first you asked about if there's any connection between, let's say, ancient Chinese and ancient Greek stuff. Here's my answer. Truth is truth, and healing principles are healing principles. If the ancient Chinese and the ancient Greeks tapped into the knowledge of the true healing principles, good, then I guess they got great results. We don't know for sure. We just hear about what they might have done. But I'm open to the idea that they did great things. And all I can say is results are above everything. So if ancient Egyptian or Greek or Chinese healers and doctors were getting amazing results, all I can say is, yeah, they obviously were tapping into these healing principles. I would say, as another part of that answer to the question, I would say that the healing principles, the universal healing principles, are taught in zone school more completely and thoroughly than anywhere else in the world at the moment. Now, what was taught in ancient Greece or anywhere else, I don't know. It might have been taught the same or less or maybe better. I don't know. But on this planet right now, you're not going to find a more complete and more applicable teaching of the principles of healing. So that's the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer about chiropractic. Now, it's interesting because the first chiropractor, his name was Dr. D.D. Palmer. D.D. stands for Daniel David Palmer. He created chiropractic in 1895. His first patient who came to him was deaf. He adjusted him and he got his hearing back. That's how chiropractic started. The second patient, had a similar severe problem. Now, if you look at his book, because I have his book, it's actually a few feet away from me over there. If you look at his book, D.D. Palmer's book about what chiropractic is, 98% of his book was not about neck and back pain. It was about healing all the organs and healing every cell in the body through his ideas, which are in that book. Now, in 2022, 99% of the chiropractors in this world, unless they're my students in zone school, 99% of their patients come to them for neck and back and musculoskeletal problems. So somehow it flipped upside down because D.D. Palmer, the founder of chiropractic, created chiropractic to help heal the cells and the tissues and the organs. Healing the neck and back pain was an afterthought to D.D. Palmer. But somehow, outside of zone school, most chiropractors, that's all they do. D.D. Palmer was an amazing healer, and he created in 1895 chiropractic. And as I mentioned, Dr. Fleet created zone therapy in 1931, and I would say he took it to even a higher level. So that's kind of how chiropractic has evolved up to this point. And all I can say is that if someone is a chiropractor and they join zone school, number one, they're going to get infinitely better healing results with musculoskeletal stuff, and they're going to get results with organic stuff that they never could have got before. And I'll just add one more thing. Yes, a patient came to me, since you mentioned it, who was on a liver transplant list. They were on a liver transplant list. Now you can imagine how messed up someone's liver is if the doctor says, well, at this point, we can't even help you. We're just going to take your liver out and give you a new one. But she came to me, we balanced her body, her liver healed, and the doctor examined her and said, look, you're off the liver transplant list because your liver's all better. So anyway, yes, that did happen.
Amazing.
Can I
Vivian.
ask a question? Dr. Pete, can you talk about what is zone technique?
Great question. Great question. So, zone technique. On a let's put it like this. Zone technique has a physical and a metaphysical level. By the way, metaphysical, for anyone who doesn't know, physical just means things that you can perceive with your 5 outer senses. You can touch it and taste it and smell it and things like that. Meta just means above or beside or beyond. So metaphysical just means things beyond the physical. So there's a metaphysical aspect to the zone technique, which I'm not even talking about at the moment. Certainly anyone who joins zone school will understand that real well. But let's just talk about the physical aspect of zone technique, just the physical. The zone technique is like this. It looks at the body like an electrical machine, with the brain being the positive pole and the spinal cord being the negative pole. Like a battery has a positive pole and a negative pole. It looks at the body being an electrical machine. Brain, positive pole, spinal cord, negative pole. The positive pole, or the brain, is divided up into 6 parts. These 6 parts of the brain control the 6 main systems of the body. The glandular system, which is all the glands of the body. The eliminative system, which is everything that eliminates toxins like sinuses, lungs, kidneys, bladder, intestines. The nervous system, the digestive system, which is everything that digests and assimilates food. The muscle system, which is all the muscles, and the circulatory system, which is the circulatory apparatus. So the 6 systems of the body are controlled by the 6 brain centers. Now, these 6 brain centers actually are related to points on the back of the head. Dr. Fleet discovered this. And when you know how, which one can learn in zone school very easily, to feel these points on the back of the head, you can tell exactly which brain centers are functioning and which brain centers are not. Then there's specific points in the spinal cord which can be stimulated in order to heal the brain centers in question. Now, if one is a chiropractor, they can stimulate those points with a chiropractic adjustment. If one is an acupuncturist, they can stimulate those points with a needle. If one is a Reiki master, they can stimulate those points energetically without even touching the person. And the list goes on and on as far as the different kinds of healers that can use the zone technique to A, know what's happening in the body, and B, do what's needed to balance the parts of the body which were formerly unbalanced so people can heal. That's the physical aspect of the zone technique.
Amazing. And but you said, is that possible? Like for people who are interested, is it possible to perform this healing away, like over distance?
Totally. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned, Zone School has about 1,100 members worldwide. I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to estimate 100 of the 1,100 do all their work remotely. They never meet a client in person. They understand the principles of healing as taught in Zone School and the zone technique and how to apply the zone technique energetically, which I also teach in Zone School. And just to show you the power of it, listen to this example. We have a particular member of Zone School. She is a massage therapist. So that is her degree. As far as I know, she doesn't have any other degrees. She is a massage therapist. She also, I don't know if she's a Reiki master, but I think she's studied some type of energetic healing a little bit. So she's a massage therapist who understood a little energy healing, I believe. She joined Zone School. She understands it well. I think she stopped massaging people in person. She does 100% of her sessions remotely, the way I understand it. A client contacted her who had very bad psoriasis. So their arm was completely covered with psoriasis, completely. They had went to a few medical doctors who were dermatologists. Whatever they did didn't work because their arm was still covered with psoriasis. They went to some alternative healers, energy workers, chiropractors, acupuncturists. It didn't matter. They took Chinese herbs, whatever they did, their arm was covered. They had 3 remote zone technique sessions with this student of mine. Their arm was clear as a bell, and they sent her pictures. And when you join Zone School, we have a private Facebook group just for Zone School members, and she posted it in the group with the before and after pictures. I guess she got some kind of testimonial written to her. She posted it. So anyway, that's an example. And also there's someone who comes to mind, another Zone School member who does everything remotely. And this woman is fixing every organ in the book. People contact her with every damn problem you can imagine. She fixes everything. So anyway, yeah, it can be done remotely easily.
And it's very powerful. I do it all the time. I feel like I'm more concentrated when I'm alone. So it's really unbelievable, the results.
One question: does the client believe in life itself, energy, in healing? Does that come to affect the treatment?
Yes and no, and I'll explain the yes and the no. No, it doesn't, in the sense that they could be very mainstream. They don't really they don't understand anything about spirituality or metaphysics, or they could just be a very mainstream individual. But they heard that you're good at healing, so they come to you. If you understand the principles taught in Zone School, it doesn't make a difference at all. You can get just as good results, even if they have been studying spirituality for 30 years. It doesn't make any difference at all when you understand the principles of healing, which you learn in Zone School. So that's part one of the answer. I just want to say, and this is very subtle, and this requires a longer explanation than I would go into now, but I do explain it in Zone School also, that true faith is important, because one of the greatest, if not the greatest healer ever was Jesus, of course. Jesus was one of the greatest, if not maybe the greatest healer ever that we have record of. And there's 2 places in the New Testament where Jesus says, or it says about Jesus, that even though he could raise the dead and make the blind see and make the lame walk and walk on water and all this, he could not heal anyone in his own town. Jesus could not heal anyone in his own town because they had no faith in him. They were like, oh, that's Jesus. I grew up with him. They didn't look at him like that. And again, it's 2 different places in the New Testament. It says clearly that Jesus could do anything, but in his own town, he couldn't heal anybody because they had no faith. It says because they had no faith. So obviously, on a deep level, faith is important, but it's much more deep than that, because anyone can come and say they have faith, but meanwhile, they still don't get better with some practitioners. But in Zone School, you understand exactly how this faith is created, how it's worked with, etc., etc.
Amazing, because the letter I heard that we tap into a different level of energy, and it's quantum physics as well, isn't it?
Well,
and
sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was going to say, when it comes to quantum physics, I'm not an expert at quantum physics, but many people who are very, very well versed in quantum physics will say to me, "Oh, Pete, you were teaching this. This is just like quantum physics." So apparently, they go together. I myself, I would say I'm pretty ignorant of quantum physics, but those who are knowledgeable of quantum physics have told me many times, "Oh, Pete, you're teaching this thing. It's just like quantum physics says." So apparently they go together. And the second thing is about tapping into a separate level of energy, or my answer is it could be, I don't know. I'm not saying no, I don't know. But I do know how healing works, and I understand the principles, and that's what I teach.
But also, you didn't talk about the vibration. You have this vibration, and Dr. Fleet also had this vibration. Like, I think it's a big thing, the vibration and the image of healing.
Well, the two things she brought up was the vibration and image of healing. So let's start with the vibration. There was some of your people watching will know about Hermes, because if anyone studies metaphysical or esoteric stuff, the Hermetic principles are very popular. Hermes, his nickname was Trismegismus. They called him Hermes Trismegismus, which actually means Hermes 3 times great. Hermes 3 times great. So he came up with what he called 7 universal principles. And one of the 7 universal principles is what's called the law of vibration. And yes, when you understand how healing works, you'll start understanding vibration and how vibration plays a role in healing. So that's number one. Number two, she had mentioned about the image. And there's something also called etheria, or what's called in metaphysics the etheric plane. There's something called the astral plane and the corporeal plane. And, I teach all this in zone school. You start learning how to grab images of healing from etheria and bring them down to the astral plane, and then put them in the corporeal plane, which is the plane of the body. And people who were objectively ill and now objectively healthy. And yeah, that's a big part of not a big part, but that's a part of what's taught in zone school.
Amazing. I believe everybody watching this in our school, Phoenix, we teach about Hermes Trismegistus. We call Hermes Trismegistus in Portuguese, in the 7 universal laws, the mentalist vibration, and it matches with this amazing field that we are all involved and we are part of it, and that we know just little about it. And then through your school, and I'm going to put the information again for everybody to look through it. We are in the cusps of discovering, and we are expanding. And as a nurse in hospital a few years ago, that's why I got so interested in your course, because sometimes patients used to come to me and say, "Oh, do you think I'm going to get better?" And I had to say they will get better, but I didn't know how I knew they would get better. And then after started studying about energy, about power of the thought and intention, and how we tap into this energetic world, I tell them, you are getting better. You think about getting better. And just being that person, passing that energy. And I'm not very, obviously I don't know much about all the techniques or from the zone school, but we have this power that we must start learning how to use it, because it's there. We need to walk away from the negative side of it and be as the co-creators that we're here to be, I believe. And that's why I've related, I empathize when related so much with your teachings, because
Well, I wanted to say 2 things that you brought up. The first thing you brought up, in the list of things you mentioned, you used the word intention. It's a good word. What I would say is, in zone school, I will teach you, or anyone who joins, that intention, of course, is good. Obviously, it's good. You want to have an intention that someone heals. But I'm going to teach you about expectation, which is completely on another level from intention, which is why many healers have very good intention, but they get mediocre results. But when I teach you about expectation, it changes everything. So I just wanted to point out that word intention, that I agree with you totally. It's a beautiful word. And then I'm going to show you how to take it to a whole different world. Now, that's number one. Number two, what I think is this, and I'm not saying this applies to anyone in particular who's listening to my voice. This may or may not apply to anyone, but I want to say this in case it does. There are many people who have studied spirituality for 10, 20, 30 years. And these people have studied healing modalities for 10, 20, 30 years. And they've studied related things for 10, 20, 30 years. Yet somehow it's hard for them to put them together when someone's in front of them. That person has, terrible digestive problem or terrible circulatory problem or terrible nervous system problem. They don't exactly know how to take that person who's very sick and get them to be healthy, even though they have all this knowledge. What Zone School will do, it'll tell you exactly how to do that. It'll take all this knowledge you already have, and it's going to organize it in a way, plus it's going to give you a lot of new knowledge. And you're like, oh, you know what? This person has, every time they eat, they have heartburn, they have acid reflux, they have stomach aches, they have constipation, they have no problem, because after a few sessions with me, they're going to have perfect digestion. It will teach you to do that despite all the knowledge people have had who haven't really known how to put it together and have a human being who's in front of them who's sick and then help them be healthy. They don't really know how to do that. Zone School will change all that. It'll show you how to quickly and effectively and completely help people heal.
Wow. Vivian, do you have any more questions? If anybody's if somebody really needs to look for you as a healer, can they find information on?
This is what I would say. It's a great
Okay.
question. We'll put it in two categories. We'll put it in people who are not healers or doctors of any type, but they're looking for healing. They can go to zonetechnique.com. They can click on directory, and they can look for a certified practitioner in their area. So that's for anyone who needs healing. And then anyone who is a chiropractor, medical doctor, Reiki master, anyone who's a doctor or healer of any type who wants to learn this and be able to do it, go to zonetechnique.com. You can join right on the homepage. And then you're going to get about 50 hours of online learning from me, 8 hours of which are live Q&As with me and a group of other students. You can ask me any question you want. And then in a few weeks or months or whatever it takes, you'll be a master healer. And how do we know? Because we have, like I said, 1,100 and growing fast members. We have people all over the world, as Vivian can confirm, people all over the world getting, one miracle of healing after the next. So it's very applicable.
Wonderful.
Jussara, I have one more question to Pete, Dr. Pete. I saw your video of the mastermind, and you did magnetic healing. Can you talk a little bit about the magnetic healing? Because I've been doing that, and I did on Jussara on Tuesday, and it was unbelievable.
Magnetic
results.
healing is interesting. Magnetic healing is something that I teach just a little bit. If let's say if Zone School is like this, magnetic healing is just like this. I just teach a little magnetic healing because understanding the principles of magnetic healing will make all the rest of your healing better. And of course, you could also use magnetic healing. And to quote Dr. Fleet, Dr. Fleet says the interesting thing about magnetic healing is sometimes it will work when nothing else will. So just an interesting quote from Dr. Fleet.
Unbelievable. And just so people know that you mentioned on that video, if somebody wonders if they're not happy with the course, you said that you give the money back or something?
Guaranteed. I have 100% money back guarantee. If anyone goes through the material and within 60 days they don't like it, they just tell us, we give them a full refund. But here's the cool part. With 1,100 students, I think I've only given 5 refunds, or no, maybe not 8 or 9, sorry, about 9 refunds. So imagine 1,100 people who I said, look, if you don't like it, just ask, you get your money back. And only 9 people got a refund. What does that tell you? It almost never happens.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, amazing. If we don't have any more questions, I'm going to leave it open here, an invitation eventually, if you're available in the future, about people have questions, and if we can work a little bit more towards people's curiosity, and if you're available, of course. And already, thank you for coming and spending your time with us, answering our questions and explaining this amazing technique that your heart told you to follow, which I believe that is a mission. And people like yourself are coming to the planet just to spread the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of healing that's within us. And It's in the universe, it's in the field that we just need to learn how to tap into it. And you're going to be great teaching us that.
Great. And I'm totally open to coming back again. So if you want to set that up, no problem.
Thank you very much. Vivian, do you want to say anything before we close up?
No, I think it was great. I love it. Thanks.
Yeah, I love it as well. And thank you very much for coming. And eu vou agradecer a todos que estiveram aqui com a gente, com essa apresentação maravilhosa do Dr. Peter. E vamos nos informar. E quem tiver interessado, entre no www.zonetechnique.com. Se informe mais a respeito dos cursos. E muito obrigada. Tchauzinho, gente. Boa tarde.
Tchau.